Okay, let's dig into this. We've got quite a stack of sources here, and they're presenting something pretty dense, what they call the absolute divine governance equation, or ADGE framework.
Right. It's framed not just as a theory, but as a sovereign operating system for reality itself.
Exactly. And our job today is to unpack that, get the core ideas out, and really understand its central claim, which is kind of staggering.
It is that the whole point of everything, all of reality, boils down to maximizing just one thing, the network development coefficient, or CERN.
So let's start where the sources demand we start. There's a radical shift in understanding basic terms. They insist Din al-Islam isn't a religion.
No, not in the way we usually think of it. They define it as the sovereign governance system of seeding,
Yeah.
basically a technical manual for how reality, cognition, everything is governed.
Okay, so there's this established order, the Din, and it requires you, the individual, the fianafs, the cognitive agent, to consciously enter a state of seeding, which is Islam.
You have to actively yield to cede your own assumptions, your own way of thinking, to this divinely governed procedure. It's a fundamental prerequisite.
There's a huge barrier to entry, conceptually.
It is. And the whole system, the operational code, is supposedly laid out in this ADGE governance manual, which they derive from the Quran using something called organic Quranic methodology.
And a core principle right off the bat.
Yeah.
Sovereignty is hierarchical, non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Based on this one rule, which is pretty critical, no data generated within the simulation can validate the code that runs the simulation.
Let's pause on that because it's crucial. It's like being a character in a really advanced simulation.
Mm.
You can study the world inside the simulation, figure out its physics, maybe, but you can never use the tools or data from inside the simulation to understand why the simulation exists or who programmed it.
Precisely. Any attempt to use your own rational observations, what they call RT, rational thinking, to answer those ultimate level one questions about purpose or creation, that's immediately flagged as a system error, a fundamental misunderstanding of jurisdiction,
Which forces this epistemological shift they talk about, moving away from acidity
which is that surface truth, the stuff RT can figure out, the observable mechanics,
towards al-haq.
the ultimate governance truth, the truth of the code, not just the graphics it produces.
And to help with this shift, the vocabulary gets completely redefined. Iman, for example. It's not just faith anymore.
Not passive belief, no. In this ADG, IMAN is a quantifiable output. It's measurable safety and security, M, and overall governance stability. It's a system state you achieve.
That's quite a technical definition. And what about bait? Usually house.
Here, it's the linguistic motif, the cognitive framework. It's the very structure your understanding is built upon, like the architecture of your thought process.
And hide. The pilgrimage.
Also transformed. It's not about a physical journey so much as the ultimate intellectual argument. The process required to dismantle your old, flawed cognitive structures, the ones built on that faulty RT. It's an intellectual submission.
Okay, so if faulty RT is the problem, that leads us to the core system error they identify. Shook.
Kernel level corruption, that's the term they use. It happens when RT, which they classify as just a subordinate level 7 tool,
For observing the surface.
right, when that tool gets improperly elevated, when you treat it as a governance reliance authority, an ILA, it's not about idols in the old sense. It's about making your own limited reasoning the ultimate authority.
Jurisdictional overreach, as you said.
Yeah.
Using level 7 data to answer level 1 questions about the code itself.
Exactly. And the sources point to Stephen Hawking as a prime example.
His physics was brilliant, level 7 work, pure as Sid.
Absolutely. Top tier observation of the simulation's mechanics. But when he drew philosophical conclusions from that physics declaring atheism, saying there's no purpose.
That, according to this framework, was the shirk error.
Yes. He used the simulation's physics engine to try and determine the developer's intent. He asked level 7 tools to answer the 5 core governance questions: purpose, origin, afterlife, etc., which the framework says they simply cannot do.
That clarifies the distinction nicely. It's not anti-science. It's about putting science, or RT, in its proper place.
Huh.
So how does the system actually train the individual, the Frundanafs, to avoid this error?
Through a mandatory developmental cycle. You, the Knafafs, start in the Muslim state, which here just means actively seeding your initial biases, starting the process.
And that act itself has an effect.
Apparently, yes. It begins to reduce the collective cognitive bias quantum. A term they use is a bar network. Then comes Salat.
Which isn't just ritual prayer here.
It's defined as the learning cycle, constantly requesting guidance, integrating new data from the system, refining understanding, an ongoing feedback loop.
Followed by zakat. And again, not just charity in the usual sense.
Correct. Zakat is the planning cycle. It's the mandatory knowledge sharing protocol. You take the purified knowledge or value you've gained and you must transfer it back into the network. Systemic resource recirculation.
And that's what generates baraka.
Exactly. Baraka is the efficiency multiplier. It optimizes the network's development, the overall 7F doll. So compliance with these cycles isn't about morality per se. It's the literal currency of development within this system. It leads to the state of Muminun, full system security.
Okay, if individuals have biases that need seeding, it makes sense these would show up at scale in our systems. Which brings us neatly to part two, how ADGE views what it calls systemic apparitions, like the global economy.
Right. So standard rational thinking looks at the economy, maybe a $110 trillion global GDP figure for 2025, market caps around $145 trillion, and sees scarcity, trade wars, debt ceilings, aging populations, problems based on limited resources.
Standard economic anxieties,
Yeah.
but ADGE.
Sees it totally differently. Economics deals with resource phantasms, temporary appearances, governed ultimately for an eternal purpose.
And the main goal isn't maximizing GDP.
No. The primary economic goal is preventing riba, which they define broadly as systemic corruption or imbalance. The aim is to transform the current economic activity to yield quart def economy. That's eternal network growth, something way beyond GDP.
Now, this is where the numbers got really wild for me. The sources mentioned a potential market valuation for this ADGE operating system, maybe $25 to $50 trillion. But then they immediately say that's not its value.
Yeah, this is maybe the most striking claim. That 25T to $50 two figure, it's defined as the quantifiable present-day cost of shirk.
Wait, say that again. The cost of the error.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It represents the estimated market value of all the inefficiency, the waste, the friction, the systemic drag caused by the entire world relying on faulty rational thinking systems. It's the value loss due to collective cognitive bias and network.
How could you even quantify that? That's an incredible assertion. They're basically saying our current global systems are burning $25 to $50 trillion worth of potential because they're fundamentally misaligned with reality's OS.
That's the claim. The framework